built this exhaust out of concrete to find out how only the shape will change the sound. Because at least with trumpets it doesn't really matter if you make them out of brass, concrete, jelly,
a jelly trumpet,
or ice.
It's the same sound. So it kind of proves that in the case of trumpets, the material itself doesn't actually matter. It's the shape of the air inside that is vibrating and producing that sound.
But there is a difference in exhausts. The pressure waves can be 10,000 times stronger, which can cause the material to vibrate on its own. But making them out of concrete should get rid of those vibrations so we can see how only the shape will influence the sound. Like this 6x2 collector. Let's see what happens to the sound when we add a wire pipe. And maybe this experiment will help me in my quest to find a recipe for the sound of supercars. Let's have another look at this. A 6x1 collector adds some smoothness to the sound of the 6-cylinder. Especially compared to the sound of the 6x2 collector, which makes it sound like it's gargling with concrete. But adding a Y pipe to it not only brings back the smoothness, it also seems to add some sort of resonance. What's going on and where does that resonance come from? Time for some science. After an internal combustion engine has finished combusting, leftover combustion pressure gets first released into the exhaust and then into the atmosphere. But part of that wave's energy returns back into the pipe as suction wave. And it will keep bouncing like a spring until all its energy has been dissipated. Here's one example that shows how the wave's energy can fade away over time. But here's the problem. In a 6-cylinder spinning at 6000 RPM, firing 300 times per second, the next pulse arrives now. And that sounds nothing like a supercar. Okay, that's not a big surprise, but what if I told you, even if you would double the cylinders and triple the RPM, you would still end up with the sound characteristic of a door buzzer or a honeybee. This Peugeot Rally car is powered by a V16. That motor is capable to send more pressure pulses into its exhaust than any Formula 1 V10 ever made. But yet, it still sounds kind of meh. Because to get that high-pitched supercar sound that was made famous by Formula 1 cars, there's one ingredient missing. But this BMW with a Judd sticker on the backlid and a Judd flat-plane V8 mounted in the front that is capable of firing over 700 times per second has all the right ingredients, and the sound this thing makes is unbelievable. Sorry, I meant the other one. Wow, just incredible! This car must use a Formula 1 engine. Even between these two engines, the sound difference is remarkable. But there is something you should know. It's the same engine. To get a car to scream like it just escaped from a Formula 1 retirement home takes more than just high RPM. You also need to orchestrate the air vibrations inside the exhaust. And to get the air to vibrate, we need the help of the pressure waves. What these waves look like is fundamental to the sound we later hear, and their shape gets dictated by a variety of engine specs. Here's a short list of some of them, but you don't have to look too close because none of those factors is a replacement for what needs to take place inside the exhaust. But when you combine pressure waves from multiple cylinders evenly spaced into a single pipe at a high enough frequency, we can get a small glimpse of what that missing ingredient for the supercar sound might be. It's exhaust drone, or call it resonance. Although this effect is closely related, the frequency is nowhere near high enough to be mistaken for a supercar, and it only works at a very specific RPM in combination with very specific pipe lengths. But there are ways to increase the frequency of that resonance and to create it before it even reaches the tailpipe. Then it will be much less dependent on a specific pipe length or a specific RPM. So let's have a look what happens inside a regular header in front of the tailpipe. This could be a simplified version of the Judd flatplane V8 we saw earlier. After the pressure wave gets released, it will travel to the end of the pipe. Okay, stop. What happened here? Now there seems to be two ends of the pipe. The collector becomes an inflection point, but the limited space inside doesn't allow for a full reflection of the pressure wave. But the part of the wave that can reflect makes already good use of all the pipes that are joined in the collector. The rest of the original wave's energy has to keep going until it finds another change in pipe size, and all of these wave fractions are going to split up, reflect, rejoin, like they can't make up their mind, like a YouTuber torn between shaving his balls with Manscaped,
I love Manscaped,
or pretending to care about online privacy with NordVPN.
You aren't taking your online safety seriously.
Splitting up the pressure waves into tiny fractions enables them to interfere with each other in complex patterns, like they do in musical instruments. But here's the problem. Even in a Judd flatplane V8 fitted with a pair of 4-into-1 exhausts spinning at over 10,000 RPM, there aren't enough waves in each header to create a high-pitched sound to begin with. That is, unless you join both banks together with a Y-pipe. That not only cuts the time in half between the release of leftover cylinder pressure into a common exhaust, but every pressure wave that passes by the Y-pipe will split into 3, increasing the likelihood for the pressure waves to resonate tremendously. Try to imagine it like this: when you plug a guitar string, you load a full spectrum of waves into it. Some of the waves will naturally match the string's preferred way of movement and resonate. But the waves that don't follow how the string wants to move will quickly fade away. But in an exhaust, instead of waves dancing on pieces of strings, they are traveling in a super hot high-speed smog express, which can travel at over 300 feet per second. That not only makes standing waves impossible, it's almost as impossible to predict what it will exactly sound like. And we haven't even touched on the material part yet. But then there's also this question: have you ever seen a Formula 1 V8 or V10 using a Y-pipe? Or did that white and blue BMW from earlier use one? No and no. The BMW from earlier used an 8-into-1 header, but even if a piston engine sends 700 pulses per second into a single collector, it won't resonate like that. Don't ask me how I found out. Even in an all-into-one header, it still takes a second inflection point before the collector to create this high-pitched frequency, but that seems to be impossible unless you add some steps. And if you've ever wondered what a stepped 6-into-1 concrete header sounds like when it's coupled to an engine that taps out at around 300 exhaust pulses per second, guess what? You're about to find out. But before... I really would like to thank the sponsor of today's video, Oh, stop! I wanted the other one.
Thank you to Manscaped for sponsoring today's video. I love Manscaped.
Or maybe not. Let's play a little game instead. Can you hear the difference between a concrete 6-into-1 header that's driven by someone who's scared it's going to explode and fly through the windshield, and someone who isn't? And before I forget, one of the headers was stabbed. But if you've got any ears, you've noticed that already, despite them being made basically out of stone.